Republican Attorney Generals Association, and various Trump political groups. In total, 92 Republican targets, including Republican groups and Republican-linked individuals, were placed under investigative scope of Arctic frost. On that political list was one of Charlie Kirk's groups, Turning Point USA. In other words, Arctic frost wasn't just a case to politically investigate Trump. It was the vehicle by which partisan FBI agents and Department of Justice prosecutors could achieve their partisan ends and improperly investigate the entire Republican political apparatus. So today, Senator Johnson and I are making these records public for the entire country to see, and I hope a lot of people are interested in seeing what government can do when various agencies have a political agenda. My investigative work has also exposed the political way in which Peter Navarro was investigated and prosecuted. When FBI agent Thibault found out that Biden's DOJ would prosecute Navarro, he said, "Wow, great." That's a quote, unquote. Through whistleblowers, I've obtained a audio recording of Special Agent Giagardina and Special Agent Sebastian Gardner's delivery of a subpoena to Navarro. I'm making that audio public today. In a court document filed by the Department of Justice, Navarro's interaction with the FBI was unfairly described as, quote, unquote, the word combative. That intervention with Navarro was just as the justification to later aggressively arrest him. Then we get to the Clinton Annex and the Durham Annex. The Clinton Annex showed that the Comey FBI had evidence necessary to complete the Clinton investigation, the one about her mishandling of emails and classified information, but the FBI never did its job because it never reviewed the evidence at that time. The Durbin Annex showed that the Clinton campaign had a plan to falsely tie Trump to Russia, yet the Comey FBI failed to investigate that information. Instead, the Comey FBI used the discredited Clinton campaign-funded Steele dossier to advance crossfire hurricane against Trump. Director Patel, thanks in a large part to you, both annexes were finally declassified. That may be history, but it's history to make sure we don't repeat the history of the past. And the people ought to be concerned when the weaponization of government is used in this way, whether it's done by Republicans or Democrats. Last Congress, I made public an FBI document called 1023 form that alleged a bribery scheme with the Biden family. To date, the FBI has never answered Congress whether they investigated the text messages, the audio files, and the financial records referenced in that 1023. Whistleblowers have provided my office with 2 additional FBI 1023 documents. These documents memorialize statements from FBI sources. These 2 new 1023 documents are from separate FBI confidential human sources during different years. So in total, we now have 3 different FBI confidential human sources providing information about the Biden family and potential criminal conduct. Today, Senator Johnson and I are releasing these records. Let me say this for the partisan media, the people that are supposed to be policemen of our Republican form of government. We aren't saying the allegations are true. We want to know what the FBI did to fully investigate their veracity or lack thereof and what they concluded. Let's put this matter to rest one way or the other. Starting with my chairmanship, I've given one example after another of disgraceful partisan weaponization by federal law enforcement. Since the Trump administration took power, many FBI agents have been removed. The removal included agents and prosecutors who became partisan weapons that lost their way, and I've made records public to prove it. And many of my whistleblowers were aggressively retaliated against by some FBI agents who were subsequently fired. One FBI whistleblower publicly said of these terminations, quote, ensuring that they no longer work at the FBI isn't retribution, it's responsible leadership, end of quote. Which brings me to my final and favorite topic, whistleblowers. In August, 10 of my FBI whistleblowers secured compensation agreement because of your leadership, Director Patel. It included a mix of reinstatement to the FBI, reinstatement of security clearances, and monetary compensation. At the beginning of this month, another of my FBI whistleblowers got their job back. All told, across government agencies, almost 20 whistleblowers have received fixes to their retaliation. Today, you'll get a lot of grief from some members of this committee, but in the short amount of time you've been director, you've corrected whistleblower retaliation, increased transparency more than any other FBI director I've seen, whether that FBI director was appointed by Republicans or Democrats. And I've been around here more than anybody else on this committee. I yield to Senator Durbin.
Thanks, Chairman Grassley, for holding this oversight hearing during a critical period in the history of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. During my 4 years as chair, I held 4 hearings with then FBI Director Wray. As a reminder to Republicans who claim the Biden administration weaponized the FBI, President Biden retained Director Wray, a lifelong Republican who was President Trump's nominee for the office. After his second election, in an unprecedented move, President Trump forced out Director Wray and nominated Kash Patel, arguably the most partisan FBI director ever. Director Patel came to the FBI with a political mission, and he spelled it out in writing in detail. He wrote, "Government gangsters, quote, the rot at the core of the FBI is not just scandalous, it's an existential threat to our Republican form of government," end quote. And with the power of his office and the blessings of the president, he attacked the FBI with a vengeance. Mr. Patel had falsely claimed the FBI, quote, was planning January 6th for a year, end quote. He even went so far as to produce a song by the January 6 rioters who violently assaulted police officers in the Capitol. He compiled an enemies list of public servants he called government gangsters, like former FBI Director Mueller, whom Patel called, quote, an utter swamp creature. Former Trump officials who served with Mr. Patel warned us he would weaponize the FBI to protect the president's allies and target his critics. And indeed, Director Patel has already inflicted untold damage on the FBI, putting our national security and public safety at risk. Since January 20th, the Trump administration has engaged in an unprecedented purge of FBI officials. As we heard from highly credible whistleblowers, Mr. Patel was involved in directing this purge even before he was confirmed, despite his sworn testimony to this committee. It began with terminations and forced retirements of all 6 nonpartisan career officials who run all 6 branches of the FBI, the executive assistant directors. Since then, at least 18 of the 53 special agents in charge of FBI field offices have been removed, along with many other senior officials. Individual agents have been targeted for termination simply due to the work that they were assigned, such as January 6th investigation. In fact, according to former acting FBI Director Brian Driscoll, in a lawsuit filed last week, Director Patel made this very plain, telling Driscoll personally, quote, that his own job depended on the removal of agents who worked on the cases against the president, end quote. And even though he knew, quote, the nature of summary findings were likely illegal. At the same time, Director Patel has installed MAGA loyalists as political appointees in key career positions, including conspiracy theorist Dan Bongino as FBI Deputy Director, the first time in the history of the FBI that this position has not been held by a career FBI agent. Director Patel has also reportedly initiated loyalty test, requiring dozens of officials to sit for polygraph exams and answer inappropriate questions about whether they've made negative comments about him personally. Of course, as is often the case in the Trump administration, the rules apply to thee, but not to me. As we understand it from highly credible sources, key members of Director Patel's senior executive team and others on the 7th floor had disqualifying alerts on their initial polygraph exam. Well, how did they survive? They survived because of a personal waiver by either the director or the attorney general to remain employed by the Bureau. Understand the context here. Political operatives in key positions, given the routine FBI polygraph exam, failed and had to receive waivers to continue their positions. They were lucky to keep their political appointments. They were, but the 5,000 career civil servants the director has so far forced out of the Bureau's ranks were not offered that same courtesy. 5,000. This mass exodus has created a disastrous brain drain, particularly in the fields of cybersecurity, counterterrorism, and counterintelligence. For example, my office has received information indicating that cuts to the Bureau's cyber division will cut personnel by half, despite the ever-increasing threats posed by adverse foreign actors. The brain drain is exacerbated by Director Patel's misuse of remaining FBI personnel and resources to focus on other priorities of this administration. According to reports, the 25 largest FBI field offices have been ordered to divert 45% of their agents from their primary missions to work on the mass deportation of immigrants. Just as concerning is Director Patel's plan to hire fewer qualified agents by removing the college degree requirement and reducing new agent training at Quantico from 18 weeks to just 8. So we have a brain drain and a significant watering down of training. Quite a record, Mr. Patel. As recently fired special agents and others have warned, fast-tracking inexperienced and improperly trained people into critical national security jeopardizes the Bureau's ability to effectively protect America. Director Patel himself had no training or life experience for this position. The result of that incompetence is staggering. For example, after Attorney General Bondi publicly stated in February that the Epstein client list was, quote, sitting on my desk right now to review, that's what she said on Fox, Director Patel diverted more than 1,000 FBI personnel from their critical missions to work on 24-hour shifts reviewing over 100,000 pages of Epstein-related records. These personnel were instructed to flag any records in which President Trump was named. But that review ended in an unsigned memorandum from DOJ and FBI stating simply, "There is no incriminating client list," close quote. Director Patel still has not responded to my letter from 2 months ago asking about his role in this cover-up. On the day of the horrific shooting of Charlie Kirk at Utah Valley University, Director Patel again sparked mass confusion by incorrectly claiming on social media that the shooter was in custody, which he then had to walk back with another social media post. Mr. Patel was so anxious to take credit for finding Mr. Kirk's assassin that he violated one of the basics of effective law enforcement. At critical stages of an investigation, shut up and let the professionals do their job. Notably, Director Patel recently forced out Special Agent in charge of Salt Lake City, Mayim Saeed, a counterterrorism expert with 20 years' experience, who would have led this high-profile investigation. The men and women who serve at the FBI and the American people deserve a director who has the ability and the character to restore the Bureau to its place as the preeminent law enforcement agency. I want to close on a personal note. I came of age in the 1960s. We experienced a number of horrific assassinations, including President John Kennedy, Senator Robert Kennedy, and Dr. Martin Luther King. We are going through a similar period of division and political violence. All of us in public life, on both sides of the aisle, have a responsibility to bring down the temperature and to work to unite the American people. Let's be clear. Republicans are not Nazis, and Democrats are not evil, as Mr. Patel has claimed. Democrats are not responsible for the murder of Charlie Kirk, and Republicans were not responsible for the murder of Melissa Hardman. Our political opponents are not our enemies. We are all Americans, and we should be working together to keep the American people safe and protect their constitutional rights. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Would you please stand so I could swear? Do you affirm that the testimony you're about to give before this committee will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God. Please be seated, and you can give your statement now.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Durbin, and members of the committee. It's an honor to be here with you today as the 9th Director of the FBI. I want to providing a briefing into the tragic assassination of Charlie Kirk. It's important that this FBI is transparent as possible without jeopardizing investigations. Charlie Kirk was shot at 12:23 p.m. on September 10th. I think this timeline is critically important. Less than a day later, the FBI, at my direction, released the first set of images of the suspect that we captured based on our analysis on the ground. Later that evening, while conducting extensive interviews and cell phone analysis, and also flying out evidence response teams and hostage rescue teams and evidence tacticians who were collecting evidence in live time and flying them back to Washington, D.C. in our laboratories for immediate analyses, we were able to extract video from the campus feed. And at my direction at 8 p.m., in partnership and promise to working with the public to bring this fugitive to justice, we released a newly, never before seen video of the suspect. We also released new enhanced photos of the suspect. A few hours later, that suspect was in custody, pursuant to the interrogation of the suspect's own father, who stated, "When I saw that video that you released, I recognized it was my son, and I confronted him, and he was handed over to lawful law enforcement authorities." That is the FBI working with the public, as I promised, being transparent and providing critical information along the way in the manhunt for the suspect or suspects involved in Charlie's assassination. We received over 11,000 tips in the first 24 hours alone. We received 16,000 submissions to our digital media enterprise and tip lines. That is a large number of material to go through. I want to thank President Trump and the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, for their unwavering support and commitment of resources to this and all investigations. I also want to especially thank our colleagues in Utah, the Governor's Office, DPS, and the sheriffs out there. State and local law enforcement partnership has been a cornerstone since I took over at the FBI, and it was no different here. And our teams in Salt Lake City, our SACs out there across the country, our lab technicians in Quantico, who raced to complete the evidence analysis so the public could have the answers they need. These people worked through the night without sleep for days on end. They are to be commended. They are not to be attacked. and many, many, many more people I don't have time to thank here today. But I do want to thank the American people especially. The mission of the FBI is for them and with them and by, with, and through them. And is that mission and that ethos that I brought to this investigation and so many others, and that's why that suspect is in custody. We cannot do our job without the American public and credible reporting in the media, and that's why Tyler Robinson is in custody today, about to face charges. The last time I appeared before this committee was in January for my confirmation hearing. I told you then that if I were confirmed, I would provide and do everything I can to provide a safe and secure America. I promise to provide the courageous men and women of the FBI the tools and resources they need to crush violent crime and defend the homeland. I pledge myself to commit to full transparency, oversight, and accountability so we could restore the public's trust in the FBI. And that's exactly what I've done. Under this administration, the FBI has arrested more than 23,000 violent criminals. That's more than twice for the same time period from last year alone. 23,000, more than twice from the same time period last year. We've taken over 6,000 illegal firearms off the streets. That number is an exponential increase. We've identified and located more than 4,700 child victims. More than 4,700 child victims have been found by this FBI. That is a 35% increase from the same time period last year. 1,500 child predators have been arrested. That's a 5% increase from the same time last year. 300 human traffickers have been arrested. That's a 10% increase from the same time last year. Over 350 members of Tren Aragua, foreign terrorist organization, have been arrested, and we have 42 ongoing cases. That is a 250% increase from the same time last year. Those are just some of the things the FBI is doing differently and better because we are leading the mission to crush violent crime and defend the homeland. We have also arrested captured four top 10 fugitives from the FBI's top 10 most wanted list. To put that in perspective, that's the same amount I've captured in 7 months than my predecessor did during the entirety of the Biden administration. Those are real results, and the credit is to the men and women at the FBI. We've been able to achieve these results because the FBI recognizes violent crime doesn't just happen in Washington, D.C. That's why one of my first decisions as a director was to get the people, the Bureau's professional staff, out to the field. And we've done that with great speed. And every single one of your districts and states has received a plus-up of FBI personnel, agents, and special operators to the tune of almost 1,000. We did that because crime had unexpectedly and unacceptably exploded across the country. In fact, one of the stats that the American people should thank the FBI the most for is we are on track to have the lowest murder rate in modern American history. The lowest murder rate by double-digit percentages. A major factor in the drop of this violent crime is the FBI's flagship Operation Summer Heat. We use this initiative at the direction of the President and the Attorney General, surging resources to our major and mid-major cities across America, conducting intelligence-based operations to target the worst of the worst, to target the gangs, to target the transnational organizations, to target the TCOs, and to target the drug trafficking cartels. And we have taken them out city by city. There's a lot of work left to be done, but we're off to a great start. Just ask the citizens of Seattle, Miami, Memphis, Charlotte, Chicago, and so many more places. Specifically in New Orleans and Nashville alone, there has been an increase in the number of violent crime arrests by an average of 250% for each of those cities. And there has been a drastic reduction in crime across the board in mid-major cities across this country, thanks to the men and women of the FBI. How are we doing that? We are attacking the drug epidemic. We've seized nearly 1,000 kilograms of meth and cocaine off the streets of America. We've taken over 1,600 kilograms of fentanyl off the streets. Maybe one of the greatest achievements we have this year, 1,600 kilograms of fentanyl. That's a 25% increase from the same time last year. To put things in perspective, that's enough fentanyl to kill a third of the American populace, 115 million Americans. We're also going after the companies that manufacture these precursors overseas in places like mainland China and their cutting agents. In fact, this month in Cincinnati, we announced groundbreaking charges aimed at the individuals and businesses responsible for flooding these opioids and their precursors and cutting agents into the streets of America. And for the first time that I can remember, we are charging these businesses and enterprises, not just in America, but in mainland China, and seizing their operational necessity to have money by seizing their cryptocurrency wallets. We're also equally important to protecting the homeland. We know we have a no-fail mission. We're committed to keeping our nation safe from terrorism, cyber attacks, and foreign adversaries. Whether stopping threats inspired by foreign terrorist organizations or lone wolf actors or sponsored by hostile nation states. This year, we've already made nearly 60 counterintelligence arrests.
Of the civil rights movement that opened up the FBI and the federal workforce to lots of people who never would have been hired in its first decades. Alas, you share J. Edgar Hoover's dangerous obsession with blind loyalty over professionalism and effective public policy. For Hoover, it was blind loyalty to him in keeping his secrets. For you, it's blind loyalty to Donald Trump in keeping his secrets. During your confirmation, it was widely noted on all sides that your primary qualification was your unwavering loyalty to Trump. Unlike other directors, you had no work experience at the FBI, but you had made over 1,000 media and political appearances in support of Trump's campaign. Your Senate confirmation vote was 51-49, the closest in history, with your opponents warning you were not qualified and had no interest in actually developing the qualifications for the job. I hoped that they were wrong. Alas, they were not. While most other new FBI directors drew on their experience as FBI agents, you didn't have that. But you did write a picture book trilogy for children ages 5 and up based on your experience clashing with President Trump's political enemies. In your book, you describe your literary alter ego, Kash the Knight, as a wacky, easily bored wizard carrying out King Donald's vengeance by driving his enemies out of the kingdom. In the books, King Donald is besieged by the evil Hillary Queentown, but saved in the end by Kash. Then Kash goes on to catch mules who are stealing the 2020 election for the great King Donald from Sleepy Joe. And then in the third book, Kash takes down the dragon of the jalapenos, nicknamed the DOJ. Your supporters had hoped that you would graduate from imagining yourself a romantic fairy tale knight to actually running America's premier federal law enforcement agency. Alas, just as we've learned how dangerous it is to put a science-denying anti-vaxxer in charge of our public health, we've learned how dangerous it is to name as director of the FBI a man who thinks of himself as a fairy tale knight who keeps a fire-breathing dragon named DOJ at home to forcibly drive villains out of the kingdom. When Charlie Kirk was assassinated, while his killer was still on the loose, you decided you didn't need to be at FBI headquarters in Washington to work with your team while the chaotic manhunt unfolded. You spent your evening dining in a swanky Midtown Manhattan restaurant and tweeting out false information that the subject of the shooting was in custody, a statement you had to retract 1 hour later. Your performance was so disturbing that even the MAGA base was alarmed. Culture warrior Christopher Rufo, who just a few months ago sat in your chair as a Republican witness, observed that you performed terribly, and he called for your ouster. The FBI might be able to survive your delusions of grandeur and the explosively volatile temper that was on display yesterday in the Senate, but the intractable problem is that you are running the FBI not as a law enforcement agency charged with keeping the American people safe, but as a political enforcement agency working directly for the president's vengeance campaign. 7 months in, it's impossible to overstate the destruction, chaos, and demoralization you've brought to the FBI and its workforce and the resulting danger your actions have caused to our country. You've been systematically purging the FBI of its most experienced and qualified agents, division leaders, and experts in counterterror, counterintelligence, and cybersecurity, precisely the people who have the expertise you lack and which the FBI and the country need. They've been expelled from the ranks of the Bureau simply because they did their duty investigating crimes, including those committed by the mob that attacked the Capitol on January 6, 2021, and beat the hell out of more than 140 police officers, or simply because you suspected them of being insufficiently loyal to Donald Trump. You illegally sacked Brian Driscoll, the former acting director of the Bureau, and a decorated counterterrorism expert who worked at the FBI for nearly 20 years. According to Driscoll, you told him your own job, quote, depended on the removal of agents who worked on the cases against the president, regardless of whether the agents chose to work on those cases or not. You added, quote, the FBI tried to put the president in jail, and he hasn't forgotten it. You forced out the leader of the Salt Lake City field office, Mehtab Saeed, just weeks before Charlie Kirk's assassination, depriving the FBI of an experienced counterterrorism expert described by her colleagues as absolutely the best and legendary. She would have led the FBI's manhunt had she not been fired. When Trump decided that rounding up immigrants with no criminal records was more important than preventing crimes like human trafficking of women and girls, drug dealing, terrorism, and fraud, you ordered the 25 largest field offices to divert thousands of agents away from chasing down violent criminals, sex traffickers, fraudsters, and scammers to carry out this immigration crackdown. Director Patel, you treated the men and women at FBI with disrespect and paranoia. You've assembled a roving band of freelancing henchmen within your office and charged them with conducting unauthorized investigations, targeting and harassing career FBI employees. Amazingly, you forced senior leadership to repeatedly take polygraph tests to prove their political loyalty and pushed out leaders who refused these demeaning exercises. And now we're seeing one very clear reason why you want to build a political FBI: the Epstein files. You want an FBI blindly loyal to Trump and to you as his enforcer so you can continue your cover-up of a massive international sex trafficking ring with more than 1,000 victims, betraying all of the survivors of the sexual violence. Before you got in this job, you called for full release of the Epstein files, telling podcaster Benny Johnson that the only reason the list was not released by DOJ and FBI was, quote, because of who's on that list. Upon your confirmation, you promised that, quote, there will be no cover-ups, no missing documents, no stone left unturned, and anyone from the prior or current Bureau who undermines this will be swiftly pursued. This spring, you ordered hundreds of agents to pore over all the Epstein files, but not to look for more clues about the money network or the network of human traffickers. You pulled these agents from their regular counterterrorism or drug trafficking duties to work around the clock, some of them sleeping at their desks, to conduct a frantic search to make sure Donald Trump's name and image were flagged and redacted wherever they appeared, whether an email, a text, a letter, an interview, a photograph, or a video. In May, Attorney General Bondi reportedly told Trump that his name had indeed appeared multiple times throughout the Epstein files. And not long thereafter, in July, you and the Attorney General released a memo claiming that, quote, no further disclosure would be appropriate or warranted. In a few short months, how did you go from being a crusader for accountability and transparency for the Epstein files to being a part of the conspiracy and cover-up? The answer is simple. You said it yourself, because of who's on that list. Donald Trump's relationship with Epstein over the years is well documented. A week ago, the Oversight Committee released Trump's disturbing birthday book note to Epstein, written over a drawing of a woman's naked body, referring to a, quote, wonderful secret. The Oversight Committee obtained the note from the Epstein estate, not from the FBI, raising questions again of whether the FBI has been withholding documents. While you're unleashing the FBI to cater to Trump's desire to shut down the Epstein inquiry, the first 9 months of the Trump presidency have seen a spate of political violence and domestic terror events. We saw deadly attacks on political figures on both the left and the right. The brutal assassination of Minnesota Democratic House Speaker Melissa Hortman and her husband, and the attempted murder of Democratic State Senator John Hoffman and his wife, who miraculously survived a combined 17 gunshots. We saw an arsonist set Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro's residence on fire. And of course, last week, we saw the horrific, cold-blooded assassination of Charlie Kirk in Utah that has shaken the nation. 1 minute after Charlie Kirk was shot in the neck, a 16-year-old shooter in Evergreen, Colorado, radicalized by white supremacist ideology online, opened fire and critically wounded 2 other students at Evergreen High School. We've seen lethal anti-Semitic violence, including the murder of 2 young Israeli embassy staffers just blocks from the Capitol, and then in the attack on a gathering of Jewish people in support of hostages held in Gaza in Boulder in June. We've seen continued mass shootings at schools, like the domestic terror incident at a Catholic school in Minneapolis last month, which killed 2 children and wounded 18 others. And in August, a man fired more than 500 bullets at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, killing a police officer who was a Marine veteran and a father. People like Melissa Hortman and Charlie Kirk should be able to participate in politics as elected officials or active citizens without being shot down in cold blood in the United States of America. People should also be able to go to elementary school, to middle school, to high school, to work, to the mall, and to church without being shot down in explosions of gun violence. The important position at the FBI requires a leader who puts public safety and national security and the rule of law first. I'm afraid, Director Patel, you've given us reason to believe you've used the powers of the FBI to serve Donald Trump and his agenda of partisan retribution. You've broken your promise not to do that. You've betrayed Jeffrey Epstein's victims and survivors. You've turned your back on the career law enforcement officers of the FBI, and as a result, you've left all of us less safe than before. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. That opening statement may have been longer than any book director's ever written or anyone else has written. Without objection, all of the opening statements will be included in the record. We will now introduce today's witness. Mr. Patel has been the director of the FBI since February of 2025. He previously served as chief of staff at the Department of Defense, deputy director of national intelligence with the National Security Council, and also as a congressional staffer, as a federal prosecutor, where he focused on national security cases, and he also worked as a public defender in the state of Florida. We welcome our witness, appreciate his work, and thank him for appearing here today. We will begin by swearing you in. Director, would you please stand, raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is true and correct to the best of your knowledge, information, and belief, so help you God? Let the record reflect that the witness has answered in the affirmative. You can be seated as you are. You know, you've been through this yesterday. Did a fine job. Please know that your written testimony will be entered into the record in its entirety. Accordingly, we ask that you summarize your testimony. Director, you may begin.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Raskin, and members of the committee. I want to begin today by discussing the appalling assassination of Charlie Kirk. It's important for this FBI to be transparent without jeopardizing our investigations, so a little bit of the timeline is important. Charlie Kirk was unfortunately assassinated on September 10th. We immediately, the next day, released images early in the day in local time in Utah to start the public partnership in our manhunt for the assassin and culprits. At approximately 5 p.m. local time, I arrived on the ground and walked the crime scene myself, and we flew multiple FBI assets in and out to process DNA simultaneously while bringing in evidence response technicians, hostage rescue teams, and other experts to assist state and local law enforcement with their investigation. At 8 p.m. local on September 11th, the FBI collected and populated and promulgated at a press conference a video of the suspect on the grounds. We also released enhanced images. Due to that release that I directed and ordered, the suspect involved was apprehended and in custody at 10 p.m. local time. That's less than 2 hours after we did the video release and the photo release. So within 33 hours, that individual suspect was in custody, and his family, who has since been interrogated, specifically stated to FBI interrogators that because of the video that the FBI released at my direction and because of the photographs that they released, they identified their son, they confronted their son when he swung by their home, and that's what led to his apprehension. We are still, the FBI has that investigation ongoing, and it continues to be ongoing, and I want to thank the state of Utah and the state and local authorities there. And I also want to thank the Attorney General and President Trump for directing resources to allow us to conduct that investigation as we have. Under this administration, the FBI has arrested more than 23,000 violent criminals, 23,000 in 7 months. That's twice as many year to date last year. We've taken over 6,000 firearms off the streets. 6,000 guns are no longer in the hands of criminals in 7 months. We've identified and found and located 4,700 child victims. That is a 35% increase year to date last year. We have arrested 1,500 child predators. That is a 10% increase year to date last year in just 7 months. We've assisted our partners with countless counterterrorism operations around the world. We've captured, at the FBI, 4 of the most top 10 wanted fugitives in the world in 7 months. To put that in perspective, that's as many as my predecessor nabbed in the entirety of the Biden administration. We got 4, we got more coming. On top of that, in 2 weeks, thanks to the help of the CIA, we collected and captured one of the individuals responsible for the horrific Abbey Gate bombing that led to the murder of 13 service members. We did that in 2 weeks. They didn't do it in the 4 years of the entire prior administration. Nationwide, we've been executing our Operation Summer Heat, the FBI's national focus on targeting violent crime based on intelligence-driven operations. Ask the citizens of Seattle, Miami, Memphis, Charlotte, Chicago, New Orleans, to specifically highlight New Orleans and Nashville. There has been a 250% increase in violent crime arrests in those cities alone, and other mid-major cities that I've just listed. In just a few short months, we have already unleashed 1,000 FBI personnel across this country. Every single state across this country is getting a plus-up. This is a fiction that the FBI is short or that we are compromising the men and women in the field. They do not need to be in Washington, D.C., so we're sending them into the field to each and every one of your states. Because of that, crime is at an all-time low. We had to do it because of the explosion of crime. And maybe the most important stat for Americans to realize: in just 7 months, we are on track to produce the lowest murder rate in modern U.S. history by double digits. Those are results not of mine. Those are results of the men and women of the FBI. If you want to criticize me, bring it on, but do not attack the brave leaders in the field. We are also working 24/7, 365 on the opioid epidemic that is killing more than hundreds of thousands of people a year. We have seized 1,600 kilograms of fentanyl off the streets so far in 7 months. Year-to-date, 25% increase. To put that in perspective, that's enough to kill 1/3 of the American population, 120 million Americans. 100,000 kilograms of cocaine and meth gone off the streets. Earlier this year, I highlighted in Cincinnati, Ohio, how we're getting creative to chase down those that were willing to do harm to our citizens, not just by striking at the heart of the fentanyl producers, but the fentanyl precursor companies in China. And we indicted for the first time multiple companies and individuals, not just in America, but in mainland China, that are producing the ingredients that produce and make fentanyl that kill our children. And we're going to keep going. Counterterrorism work, cyber attacks, and foreign adversaries are something the FBI must never sleep on, and we are not sleeping. In the counterintelligence space alone, this year, year to date, 30% increase in counterintelligence arrests from the DPRK, Russia, Iran, and China. And I want the American people to know, in this setting, there's a lot of work that the brave men and women of the FBI are doing we just can't get into, but they don't stop. Our cyber threats, ransomware attacks, those harming our children online. We have nearly a 20% increase in indictments and arrests in 7 months alone this year. We're going after those that harm our malware, infrastructure systems, telecom systems, and energy structure. Combating SALT and Vault typhoons are just a little bit of the examples we're doing. Maybe most importantly, under the counterterrorism and domestic terrorism umbrella, are nihilist, violent extremists, and those that label themselves 764, who wish to go online and convince children to maim and mutilate themselves and commit suicide. And we are producing record numbers of arrests under that umbrella organization. We even stopped an individual in the 764 network who wanted to conspire to kill an adolescent girl. He is now in custody. Transparency remains one of my main priorities at the FBI. And this is what I've done in my 7 months at the helm. We've produced more than 33,000 pages of documents to Congress to a variety of committees, including, I believe, 7,500 to this committee alone, if memory serves me correct. To put the 33,000 in perspective, my predecessor in 7 years produced 13,000 pages in total to the United States Congress. His predecessor in 4 years produced 3,000 pages in total. I repeat, I have produced 33,000 pages in 7 years to this Congress and will continue to do so. I'm dedicated to restoring the trust in the mission and the integrity of the FBI, and we cannot do so without congressional oversight, and I promise you I will continue to do so. On the Epstein case, the original sin on the Epstein case was how it was handled by Mr. Acosta when he first brought the case in 2006, 7, and 8. The original case had a very limited search warrant, had a very limited search window, had a very limited investigative window. I was not there when those search warrants and that investigation was launched. I would not have done it that way. They were limited to only 3 to 4 years of investigations from 97 to approximately 2001 and 2002 to 2005. Mr. Acosta allowed Mr. Epstein to enter into a plea agreement where he served weekend jails for trafficking minor women. He also was allowed to leave jail to go home on the weekends. Plus, he allowed a non-prosecution agreement to be signed as part of that plea deal, prohibiting future investigations from that prosecution and from that evidence, and prohibiting the collection of further material. That is the original sin. We are working with Congress to produce more than any administration ever has material on Epstein. And I welcome the challenge to tell us that we are not being as transparent as the law allows. We even went to court and asked the judges to lift those prosecutorial agreements and to lift those court order seals, and they denied us 3 times. Congress is welcome to do the same and join the fight. And I'd lastly like to focus on operation that the president led in D.C. Because of this, we are taking this fight in D.C. to every single city across the country. 2,100 arrests in the last month alone. D.C. has seen a 60% decrease in gun crimes, 75% decrease in carjackings, and 53% decrease in homicides in our nation's capital. And rightly so. We're bringing that fight to the streets of America. I want to thank you for your support, and I'm proud to be the director that leads this FBI into a new headquarters building that they've needed for decades, saving the taxpayer $3.5 billion, and also providing our workforce a safe environment. If you don't know the calamity that is the Hoover Building, I invite each and every one of you to walk around. I'll give you a tour myself, and you can see where the cement falls on the heads of our employees that is only to be saved by netting. Just to give you an example. Thank you for support to our mission. And I do want to highlight one thing about DC. It's because the FBI gathered sources and evidence that we were able to, through our source network, identify the horrific murder of the DC intern, Eric Tarpinian. And I've spoken to his family, and we are working to bring them justice. And Mr. Chairman, in my 16 years, now my 17 years of government service, if anyone has any questions about my service, bring it on.
Yeah. Thank you, Director. We will now proceed under the 5-minute rule. The chair recognizes the gentleman from California, Mr. Issa.
Director, delighted to have you here. You are a breath of fresh air. As you outlined, and I won't repeat it, the accomplishments, you did so with the same resources as your predecessor, roughly. Is that correct?
I believe so, yes.
And so how much of that has to do with taking people out of the backside of the FBI and moving them into the field, into doing the job for which we primarily pay the FBI?
It's exactly what we needed done. 1/3 of the FBI's workforce resided in the National Capital Region before I got there. 1/3 of the crimes do not happen in Washington, D.C.
Not anymore.
Not anymore. So 1,000 personnel of the FBI were deployed across this country on a permanent basis, and every single state in this union is getting a plus up, not a reduction, a plus up of 1811s of intel analysts and support staff. And that is why the crime rates are going down in record numbers.
Thank you for doing that, and it's perhaps the hardest thing for a bureaucrat to do is to lower the head count around them that support them, and I appreciate your willingness to do it different than your predecessor. A lot of what you covered earlier was the find, the discovery, and then the prosecution that is done by the DOJ. But I want to talk a little bit about the prevent side.
On the Charlie assassination, sir?
No, on all of these.
Okay.
Okay, for example, and I'll bring it up before the Democrats bring it up, January 6th. January 6th, we now know, because of your find, that in fact there were people involved who were not just observers but participants who in fact, it's been alleged, and I personally believe, in fact, were part of promoting, perhaps even the one woman who died, encouraging her to walk through a door that led to her death. When you see that kind of activity, and you know it was done under predecessors with full knowledge, whether it's January 6th, where embedded people crossed the line, or any other activity, including obviously the Russian hoax that we're now dealing with up in front and center. My question to you is, what can you or others do to prevent it from occurring again? Not on your watch, but on future watches. How can we know that this won't happen again the moment you leave the FBI?
It's simple. What I'm doing through our leadership cadre is having FBI agents do what they were trained to do, not what they were not trained to do, not put them in situations that both harm them and the public. We're also utilizing our SORT networks and prioritizing the threat structure to go after the narco traffickers, the counterterrorism people, the counterintelligence threats, and the cyber threats. That's what they were trained to do, and that's what we're letting them do.
One major question I have, after decades of doing this, on our side of it, both the chairman, myself, and others, both at oversight and here, have seen that the FBI and the Department of Justice hide behind non-statutory practices. Now, you've changed the interpretation of many of those practices. That's why we're getting the discovery that was previously withheld. How do we work together to make sure that we never again have false walls, non-statutory walls that say the Department of Justice has a prohibition about giving, quote, you fill in the blank, that has led to the chairman not seeing anything until you took over?
I'm wedded to aggressive constitutional oversight. Having been a House congressional staffer, I know that is an important part of securing our democracy. And the way we make it an everlasting, enduring process is by showing the American people the results of what we are doing and the important work of this committee and putting it out to them so they can see government waste, fraud, and abuse. And then they can demand from our constituents and our electors that they want this process to continue.
Last major question here. Some things are so sensitive that we both would agree they cannot be made public. Will you commit to this committee, when it is too sensitive to disclose, that you would at least make it available for in-camera review by the chairman and ranking members or others designated?
I have done that, and I will continue to do that.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a breath of fresh air. This is the beginning of what we need. But my questions today for the director are ones in which I believe that we do need to codify by agreement or by statute, if necessary, the kind of openness and transparency that we're seeing from this administration, the kind of discovery that's allowing us to do our oversight properly. And I would hope that that be the follow-up to this, obviously along with the Attorney General. And I yield back my 4 seconds.
Thank you. The gentleman yields back. The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome, Director Patel. In the wake of the tragic murder of Charlie Kirk, Donald Trump said, quote, "Violence and murder are the tragic consequences of demonizing those with whom you disagree, day after day, year after year, in the most hateful and despicable way possible," close quote. I would note for the record that Donald Trump has famously demonized practically every person he has ever disagreed with, and therefore, using his own logic, he has put their lives at risk. I should know, about 2 weeks ago, when I announced my decision not to decision not to seek re-election, many people on both sides of the aisle, including the chairman, offered me well wishes and thanked me for my service. Donald Trump, on the other hand, took to Truth Social to call me a, quote, psychopathic nut job, among other things. Yesterday, I received a threatening note filled with anti-Semitic comments and hateful attacks that mimic some of the same language used by the president. I am sure many of us on this committee face similar threats every day. We have seen political assaults on both the left and the right. The attack on Charlie Kirk, the attempted assassination of the president, the murder of the Democratic Speaker of the Minnesota House, the assault on Paul Pelosi, and the attack on the Capitol on January 6th, for example. Director Patel, do you agree that there is political violence from both the left and the right?
There is too much political violence.
Do you agree, yes or no, that there's violence?
There is too much political violence based on ideologies from either side.
From either side, okay. Are you aware of the study by the Cato Institute, a well-known conservative group, that found that 69% of the violence is from the right?
I'm not familiar with that study.
You're not familiar, okay. I would commend it to you. Are you aware the administration has threatened to use violence as an excuse to crack down on liberty and freedom of speech?
Say that again, I'm sorry?
Are you aware the administration has threatened to use violence as an excuse to crack down on liberty and freedom of speech?
Nobody at the FBI is doing that.
I didn't ask you about the FBI, I said the administration.
I speak for the FBI.
I would like to enter the record an article from today's New York Times titled, "Trump Invokes Kirk's Killing in Justifying Measures to Silence Opponents." In the wake of Charlie Kirk's killing, President Trump and his allies have laid out a broad plan to target liberal groups, monitor speech, revoke visas, and designate certain groups as domestic terrorists. I ask unanimous consent to insert this into the record. Thank you. Politicizing the murder of Charlie King to go after free speech is not a legacy I believe Charlie King would have wanted. Moving on, I want to address another topic. The FBI has traditionally played a key role in prosecuting public officials for corruption. But I fear that at a time when the president is accepting planes from Qatar for his post-presidential personal use, issuing pardons to major donors, and personally profiting from the office of the presidency, the FBI may be abandoning its commitment to investigating public corruption. Since its creation in the wake of the Watergate scandal, the Public Integrity Section has been one of the crown jewels of the Department of Justice, investigating and prosecuting corruption among the nation's public officials and acting as a key safeguard against politicized prosecutions. This section's work has been supported by an elite squad in the FBI devoted specifically to rooting out corruption. But according to reports, the Public Integrity Section has now been decimated, and the FBI's Public Corruption Squad has been disbanded. I would like to submit for the record a New York Times article entitled, "FBI Dismantles Elite Public Corruption Squad." I ask unanimous consent. Thank you. These actions are an invitation to corrupt politicians to break the law, since they know that the government is asleep at the switch. Last month, Senator Warren and I, along with dozens of other members of Congress, wrote to you and Attorney General Bondi expressing grave concern over your decision to effectively legalize corruption and to politicize prosecutorial decisions. And he asks unanimous consent to enter this letter into the record. Thank you. I don't have time today to walk through all your questions, all of our questions and concerns, but will you commit to answering this letter in short order so that we can understand what factors led to this decision and how it has impacted the ability to hold corrupt officials accountable?
I will review your letter with my team and respond as soon as I can.
You will respond. Thank you. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Arizona is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Director, for being here. I appreciate the change in the FBI and the tone since you've been there. We heard the ranking member, however, describe the FBI under your leadership as being resorting to political enforcement and you personally as being paranoid. I would just suggest that perhaps that is the projections of the ranking member himself and not you, sir. I want to refer to something that was said yesterday in yesterday's hearing by Senator Grassley. He said, "It's well understood that your predecessor left you an FBI infected with politics." At your nomination hearing, he gave you records, made public records about whistleblowers regarding something called Arctic Frost. Arctic Frost was the FBI case opened and approved by anti-Trump FBI agent Thibault, and Arctic Frost became Jack Smith's elector case. The new records show that Arctic Frost was much broader than just an electoral matter. In fact, it was expanded to Republican organizations. Some examples of the groups that the Ray FBI sought to place under political investigation included the Republican National Committee, Republican Attorneys General's Association, and Trump political groups. In total, 92 Republican targets, including Republican groups, Republican-linked individuals, were placed under the investigative scope of Arctic Frost. On that political list for investigation was one of Charlie Kirk's groups, Turning Point USA. In other words, Arctic Frost wasn't just a case to politically investigate Trump. It was the vehicle by which partisan FBI agents and DOJ prosecutors could achieve their partisan ends and improperly investigate the entire Republican political apparatus. I'd ask that, Mr. Chairman, that document be administered.
Without objection.
So, I know that this may be under current investigation, but I wish to ask specific questions about this for just a moment. What search tools were used in Arctic Frost to view private communications of targets?
I believe the traditional search tools, search warrants, lawful service of process, and the tools that the FBI has in our infrastructure systems, cybersecurity systems, and counterintelligence systems. But generally speaking, if I may, I want to use this to highlight the fact that I'm continuing my promise to work with Congress to produce documents simultaneously and also conduct ongoing investigations. I'm giving you as much as I can, and I'll give you more when I can.
Thank you. Another question regarding that is, were there any directives from the Biden White House concerning the Arctic frost investigation?
Were there any, sorry?
Directives or communications from the Biden White House itself concerning the Arctic frost investigation?
I'll just rely on what was turned over to date, sir.
Okay. So I want to add here, the search warrants that were used included the seizing of a U.S. member of Congress, his phone. I think we all know who that was and how that was taken away and used for political purposes, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Director. So we'll leave that for a second, and let's go over to the Charlie Kirk case for just a second. Let's emphasize this. How many hours did it take from the assassination to the arrest of the assassin, Mr. Director?
33.
That seems pretty swift, and it was because of the actual release of videos and photographs that you directed to be released, sir.
That's correct, and to put it in perspective, the Boston bomber took 5 days and Luigi Mangione took 5 days.
Was the platform Discord forthright from the start with law enforcement about the shooter's communications on its platform?
Discord, the platform ownership, has been working with our lawful process, and we are obtaining materials from them on a rolling basis.
Thank you. And I want to get back here to Arctic frost for just a second, Mr. Chairman. I'd like the unclassified document from the FBI released to be admitted to the record.
Without objection.
And a document from the Economic Times also to be admitted to the record.
Without objection.
So I'm going to give you the last 30 seconds. We could go on about the Epstein case. I've got a bunch about that, but I'm just going to let you, if you wish to respond to either of the two vitriolic questioning or statement from the Democrats.
The work of the FBI speaks for itself. It's on showcase here today. Anyone that wants to attack the FBI can attack me, but leave our leadership structure alone. When you have 23,000 violent felons arrested, twice as many as this time last year, the work speaks for itself.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you. Appreciate your good work, Director Patel. Yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Maryland is recognized.
Thank you kindly, Mr. Chairman. Director Patel, before you joined the FBI, you railed against it for covering up Jeffrey Epstein's human trafficking ring. Let me refresh your memory with this clip.
Has Epstein's list, they're sitting on it. That doesn't seem like something you should do. You're protecting the world's foremost predator. That seems like an evil thing to do, regardless of who may be embarrassed in the release of that list. Why is the FBI protecting the greatest pederast, the largest scale pederast in human history?
Simple, because of who's on that list.
So you finished that December 2023 interview with a challenge to the FBI and harsh words for Republicans in Congress for not getting the Epstein files out to the public. You can see this clip.
Boy pants, and let us know who the pedophiles are.
Put on your big boy pants and let us know who the pedophiles are, you said. You emphasized that the president and FBI director each had complete authority to release Epstein's client list. You said Epstein's black book is under the, quote, direct control of the director of the FBI. Look at this clip.
This is way off the topic, but who has Jeffrey Epstein's
Black book?
black book?
FBI.
But who? That is, I mean,
Oh,
there's...
that's under direct control of the director of the FBI.
All right, so you were sworn in as director more than 200 days ago. Now the black book is under your direct control. So why haven't you released the names of Epstein's co-conspirators in the rape and sex trafficking of young women and girls?
The Rolodex, which is what everybody colloquially refers to as the Black Book, has been released.
Oh, no, you're talking about what the journalist got 5 years ago? No, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about what you were talking about there,
That's
the Black
exactly
Book
what I
under
was
the direct
talking.
control of the FBI director.
We have released more material than anyone else before. The Biden administration, Obama administration had the exact opportunities to release this material, and they never did. And if you are telling the men and women of the FBI,
Why
we're
have
not
you
going after
changed your
child predators.
position?
Hang on, you said we're not going after child predators. 1,500 child predators arrested this year, 35%
Okay,
increase,
I'll reclaim my time.
4,700 child victims
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to
found.
reclaim my time if you could instruct the witness. Why have you changed your position? There you were saying it's under the direct control of the FBI director and all of it should be released. Why have you changed your
Everything
position?
that has been lawfully permitted to be released has been released. And as I told you,
Really?
the investigation was limited. And let me make something crystal clear. I never said Jeffrey Epstein didn't traffic other people, other women, and they're not other victims. This is the investigation we were given from 2006, 7, and 8, and the search warrants from 2006, 7, and 8. That's what we're working with.
Well, wait, have you released all of the stuff that the FBI has seized from Epstein's house? The computers, the emails, the file cabinets, the documents? What about the financial records? Have you released all of that?
Everything the court has allowed us to
Which
release.
court are you talking about?
3 separate federal courts have come in and said.
We're talking about the evidence you've got. It's got nothing to do with what those courts have.
Do you have any idea how the law works? Do you want me to break the law in a federal judge's order?
No,
to
I want you to
satisfy
follow your own
curiosity?
word, Director Patel. You said up there it was under the direct control of the FBI director. He had the black book.
Everything I have direct control over, we have gone to court. You haven't.
Complete
We
your
went
sentence.
to court.
Everything you have direct control over, you said.
Have gone to court, and everything we have direct
Director
control
Patel,
over.
complete your
and
sentence.
can
You said
lawfully
everything.
release.
The
We're
gentleman-
releasing.
He'd like to complete his answer.
You began the sentence, everything you have direct control over, and then you stopped that sentence. You've released everything that you have direct control over?
And I have direct control over and can lawfully release. If you're not familiar with the court orders, that's not my fault.
Oh, I'm
Go
perfectly,
look at them.
I'm
Go
perfectly
to
familiar
court.
with them. But how did we prosecute Ghislaine Maxwell?
She was prosecuted with the investigatory material that was collected from 2001 and 2005. Because of the non-prosecution agreements and the court orders on the investigations and search warrants, we were not able to develop new information. And oh, by the way, Jeffrey Epstein was out for 12 years, and the Obama and Biden administration did nothing to look at his work, his pedophile network. If you want to blame me, that's fine. But now you're blaming the men and women who conducted this
stop
great
that.
search.
I'm not blaming anybody other than you. You're not keeping your word. You said that you would release all of the materials
Has
under your
anyone
direct
released
control.
more information on Epstein than I have? Has anyone?
Much
did
more.
Comey, did Ray?
Much
Did
more.
they?
Excuse me. Much more has come out in the days since the American people in Congress have been demanding it. But it's coming out in dribs and drabs. Why don't you just release the entire file as you promised to do?
I literally just told you, there are multiple federal court orders. I'm not going to break the law to satisfy your curiosity. You didn't join us when we filed court to release the court orders. You could have. You have lawyers. You could have shown up. You didn't do that.
That's a tiny fraction of the material we're talking about.
That is not.
It is a tiny fraction.
How do you know that? Have you seen everything?
It's all misdirection.
How do you know
Time
that?
of the gentleman has expired. The gentleman from California is recognized.
Well, thank you, Mr. Director. Just to be clear, how many of the Epstein files were released in the 4 years of the Biden administration?
0.
And how many have you released?
I don't have the number, but it's got to be thousands of pages of stuff.
I was going to ask you to begin whether Americans are safer today than they were 9 months ago, but you cited dramatic increases in criminal arrests since you've taken office, a dramatic decrease in crime that's resulted. Who would have thought that taking criminals off the streets would reduce the crime rate? But somehow we have stumbled upon that new truth. But it begs the question, what was the FBI doing during the 4 years of the Biden administration to see that dramatic an increase in work under your tenure?
The simple answer is I'm letting good cops be cops. We're working with our state and local law enforcement. We're energizing our partnerships. We're bringing on more task force officers. When you have more cops in the streets, when you're using ground-based intelligence, when you're not weaponizing law enforcement and focusing on D.C. and focusing on the rest of America, this is what happens. It is not a significant mind shift in terms of how we maneuver the FBI. They've wanted to do this work since they signed up. We're just letting them.
And we've seen many prominent Democrats oppose your efforts to restore law and order to the streets of our nation's capital. I mean, all of us here have seen a dramatic change for the better here in Washington, D.C. Why are so many Democrats attacking you for that?
Sir, Democrats have been attacking me for a decade, as is the fake news media. They didn't like the fact that I exposed the Russiagate host and the largest weaponization of the FBI, DOJ, in U.S. history. We proved it to be true with congressional oversight. I'm wed to that congressional oversight and will continue to do that work.
Christopher Wray repeatedly warned this committee that the Biden open borders policy had produced a significant increase in terrorist threats that he said kept him up at night. A particular concern, he said, was the 2 million gotaways that entered the country during the Biden administration. That's an average of 41,000 every month. What are the monthly gotaway numbers today?
Sir, I'll have to get back to you on the exact gotaway numbers, but Identifying that there are gotaways is step one. Going and manhunting them is step two. And that's what we're committing our resources to do.
Well, that's my next question, is what progress has the administration made in apprehending and removing terrorist threats that came in during the Biden years?
I think you're talking about, if you're not, let me know, known or suspected terrorists. And we've encountered almost zero at the southern border since the southern border has been sealed. But the problem that we are running into is our northern border. It's largely expansive. The enemy has adapted, and we need more focus on the northern border to stop known or suspected terrorists from coming in from places like China, Russia, the Middle East, Africa, Afghanistan.
And what can you tell us about the remaining threat posed by potential terrorist cells here in the United States?
The terrorist threat that continues to be posed by international terrorists here in the United States is one of my highest priorities. We are working through our intelligence community partners to identify those individuals, and we've taken down numerous individuals in numerous rings across this country to neutralize that terrorist threat, including places like New York City, Los Angeles, and I believe Dallas, Texas most recently.
How extensively did criminal cartels like Sinaloa, Jalisco, New Generation, MS-13, Trinidad, and others infiltrate our country during the Biden administration?
By the tens of thousands.
Well, and what progress have you been making in combating their presence?
I think the DHS is best to speak to that, but I think I can't remember the numbers of tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of individuals they found that came in illegally, and the tens of thousands that associations to criminal networks have all been deported.
And that effort is being opposed every step of the way by Democratic leaders in our cities, some of our states, and right here in the Congress. Isn't that true?
Well, we're just working where we can in every single city we can, and I welcome the opportunity to partner with Republicans or Democrats on fighting violent crime like we're doing.
Mr. Biggs asked about Arctic frost. What else can you tell us about that and what we need to do to assure that it never happens again?
Continue the congressional oversight work that you're doing on Arctic frost. Let me provide you with more documentation on Arctic frost, and also call in witnesses from the paperwork that we have given you. You have that right, and the American public deserves to hear what those people have to say. As for my ongoing investigation, there's not much I can say.
What role did the FBI play in suppressing the Hunter Biden laptop story during the 2024 election?
Off the top of my memory, sir, I believe the FBI was in possession of verified information from that laptop, and it was improperly publicized that they did not have information and masked it as Russian disinformation. We now know that was categorically false. I don't know why the FBI did that, when they did that, but we've released all the materials related to that.
Thank you.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from New York is recognized. Mr. Golden.
Mr. Patel, does Donald Trump appear anywhere in the Epstein files?
I'm sorry, could you say that again?
It's not a complicated question. Does Donald Trump appear anywhere in the Epstein files?
I didn't say it was a complicated question. I just didn't hear you, so my apologies. We have released where President Trump's name's in the Epstein files and everybody else, and all credible information that we are legally allowed to release has been released.
All right, so let's go through that. You're referring to court orders that prohibit you from releasing grand jury testimony under Rule 6E. Is that what you're referring to when you say as the law allows?
That's a piece of it.
Really? What other evidence do those three court orders you cited prohibit from being released?
Information that was collected pursuant to those search warrants that were limited in fashion.
Wrong. That's not what the court order says, and that's not under 6E.
And you're talking, and I said that's 6E, and I said there was others, and I'm answering that. There are sealed court order documents. There are protective orders.
They are unsealed as part of discovery given to Ghislaine Maxwell. They are no longer sealed.
That's just not true. We can argue about it all you want.
Okay, well, you agree that there are, so your testimony here is that the reason why you are not releasing all of the videos that you have acknowledged, there are so many, and that the FBI spent thousands of hours of reviewing, the photographs, and the photographs that you have. You're saying that you're not releasing those because there's a court order requiring them to be sealed? Is that your testimony?
Never said that about the videos. On the totality of the videos, of the thousands of images that were seized pursuant to the search warrants executed at the time, the overwhelming majority of that video is pornographic material that was downloaded from the internet and child sexual abuse material. We will never release that.
Well, as you should not release the victims, but if there are videos that relate to others who Epstein trafficked to, such as maybe Prince Andrew, or photographs, that you have total control to release.
Yes, and if it
And
exists,
so why haven't you released it?
why are you supposing that that is a fact when in fact it is false? Are you saying that
You're saying that none of the videos relate to anything relevant to the Jeffrey Epstein trafficking ring?
Every single video that we have collected pursuant to the prior search warrants has been examined for the last 10 years. And every single video has been utilized for whatever prosecutions were able to be legally brought.
I'm not asking about prosecutions. I'm asking about why you aren't releasing the full Epstein files, including the names of people who were involved in the sex ring that you promised to do before you became FBI director.
I just told you, I'm not going to release downloaded porn of
I'm not
children on the
asking about
internet.
that. Fine. I'm asking about all the other files.
What other videos? Tell me. Tell me.
That's what I'm asking.
Tell me.
You're saying there are no videos that would be relevant to anyone else involved in the Jeffrey Epstein sex ring.
Pursuant to Mr. Acosta's collection of information based on the search warrants. That's all we have in our
I
possession.
understand. And I'm asking you, that stuff.
That's all we got.
I'm not asking all you got. I'm asking you, in that stuff, there's nothing that's related to to any other sex traffic, any other people engaged with Epstein in underage sex.
That's correct. To my knowledge, no.
Okay. Let's talk about the witness interviews. 302s of witness interviews. Those are not subject to the court order. Those are not subject to any fictional sealed order for a search warrant. Why aren't you releasing those with the redacted names of the victims?
We are releasing as much as legally allowed. That's why we went back to the
How is
courts.
how is that not legally allowed?
Sir, do you know how court orders work? Do you know how protective orders
Actually,
work? Do you know how
Mr.
sealing
Patel,
orders
I was a
work?
prosecutor, a real prosecutor for 10 years. I know exactly how
so I was a
court
fake one?
orders. And I want to understand what the court order prevents you from releasing witness statements that the FBI took.
You should know that as a real prosecutor, when the court hand downs a protective order and a motion to seal, the material is sealed unless
So
that
your
judge
testimony
waives
here
it.
is that all of those witness statements are under a court order, a protective order.
We are providing everything we can legally provide.
No, that's not my
Congress has sent
question.
us a
My
subpoena.
question is, why are those witness statements that are not grand jury testimony, that if they were under a protective order are no longer under a protective order, why are they not being released?
How are they not under a protective
Why are you not going to the court like you did for the grand jury testimony to unseal those records?
The DOJ did go to the court.
No, not on those records. Why
Time
aren't
of the
you going? You
gentleman.
just went on grand jury.
Time of the gentleman has expired.
You are hiding the Epstein files,
Time
Mr.
of the
Patel.
gentleman has expired.
You are part of the cover-up.
Can I respond?
Sure can.
Any allegations that I'm a part of a cover-up to protect child sexual trafficking and victims of human trafficking and sexual crimes is patently and categorically false in the work of my
So I hope you will talk to them when they
Gentlemen's time
have
has
requested
expired.
to speak with you. Because the
Gentlemen's time has
victims have
expired. Gentleman
requested
yields
and you are
back.
not responding to them.
Director, yes or no, is the FBI still spying on parents at school board meetings?
No, sir.
Is the FBI still targeting Catholics?
No, sir.
Is the FBI still spying on President Trump?
I don't believe so.
Is the FBI still censoring Americans?
No, sir.
Is the FBI still targeting Americans for shopping at Cabela's or purchasing Bibles?
Nobody is targeted for their faith.
Is the FBI still targeting Americans who are pro-life?
Nobody is targeting anyone for their beliefs.
Is the FBI still cooking the books on crime data?
The crime data is real.
Is the FBI still purging agents for conservative viewpoints?
No one at the FBI has asked their viewpoints on
Is
politics.
the FBI still labeling the Betsy Ross flag, the flag of the American Revolution, a hate symbol?
No.
Well, maybe that's why you've been able to, what was the number? 23,000 bad guys you've arrested, a huge increase from the same time period in the previous administration. I think you said 1,400 predators, 4,000 children rescued. Were those the facts?
4,700, 35% increase on children rescued.
Yeah. And you got the guy at Abbey Gate.
We got the Abbey Gate guy.
We had a guy from the 4th District of Ohio who lost his life there serving our country. We appreciate that. Maybe when you're not focused on politics, you can actually do what the FBI is supposed to do. Go get the bad guys, right?
That's what the men and women of the FBI do.
Director, did John Brennan lie to Congress? Let me just read a couple things, actually, before you answer that. 2 years ago, we had Mr. Brennan in for an interview, and I asked him, how'd you learn about the dossier in December of 2016? Mr. Brennan replied, I received a copy of it from the FBI, and the CIA was very much opposed to having any reference or inclusion of the Steele dossier in the intelligence community assessment. That's what John Brennan told the United States Congress. 7 weeks ago, the Director of National Intelligence told us this: John Brennan lied and denied using the dossier in the intelligence community assessment because he knew it was discredited. CIA officer told the House Intelligence Committee Brennan refused to remove it, and when confronted with the dossier's main flaws, he responded, yes, but doesn't it ring true? John Brennan lied to us?
Mr. Chairman, I won't stylize the evidence. What I will say is that the intelligence community assessment, those that created it and any individual involved with it, is an ongoing investigation.
There's an investigation into what took place in December and January of December 2016, January 2017, when this whole thing started, this grand conspiracy. That is being investigated, is that right?
That has been publicly announced by the department.
That's been announced by the department. Did Chris Wray hide documents from this committee?
You would know better than me, sir.
Well, I think you told us like 700 pieces of information you've given this committee since you've been the director relative to just one incident, the Catholic memorandum from the Richmond field office.
I can give you the comparison, sir. Yeah, the Catholic memo, I believe we turned over 750 documents. In Mr. Ray's tenure, I believe they turned over 19 pages.
19 pages. You've given us 700. Why would Chris Wray hide information from this committee?
You'd
Want
have
to
to
hazard a guess?
I'm sorry?
Hazard a guess why he would do that?
I don't know, sir.
I think maybe it was because FBI was spying on a priest, trying to get him to break the priest-penitent confidence that exists. You think maybe that was the reason?
You'd have to ask him, sir.
Yeah, we'd love to do that. I want to read a few names here. Arctic Haze, Tropic Vortex, Riding Hood, Foggy Falls, Echoes Fate, Sirens Lure, Genetic Christmas. What are these code names about, Director? You know?
Not off the top of my head.
Well, Arctic Haze, Tropic Vortex. My understanding, these are code names for leak investigations of classified information from the year 2017. Does that ring a bell?
In terms of leak investigations, many of those are classified and many of those are ongoing, Mr. Chairman. But we are working with you to produce documents as we close those investigations or as we declassify them.
Let me ask you this question, because this is something I've wondered about, the way the FBI used to work. The way this whole thing so many of these things unfolded. Seems to me you had all these people in government leaking information that then gets reported in the press, there's a story written about it, and then that article is then used to further the investigation and move forward with what they want to do. Did that take place back in 16 and 17?
That's the exact scenario that took place in the FISA application for Carter Page and the rest of the Trump campaign.
And that is frightening, because that's what the CIA is supposed to do in foreign countries. It's not supposed to happen to Americans. But it did, didn't it, Director?
Yes.
And not just any Americans, it happened with the President of the United States. Is that accurate?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and you were the key guy in helping expose that. And I think our country will be forever grateful for what you did to let the country know that was going on involving Americans, which is not supposed to happen, and not just, again, any American, but the President of the United States. Chair now recognizes the gentlelady from California.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm concerned by reports that FBI agents have been diverted from their important work on crime and anti-terrorism to work on matters that are not critical to our safety. I'd like to play the video, the whole video
Jeffrey
clip.
Epstein's
Black Book?
Black Book.
FBI.
But who? That is, I mean, there's...
Oh, that's under direct control of the director of the FBI.
So, but the Black Book, it's not just sitting, I mean, that's Hoover power times 10.
And to me, that's a thing I think President Trump should run on. On day one, roll out the Black Book.
In contrast to that attitude of let it all out, we're getting reports of actions that run contrary to getting everything out and that also involve diversions of FBI resources. For example, an FBI whistleblower reported that you were pressured by the Attorney General to place 1,000 personnel on 24-hour shifts to mine roughly 100,000 Epstein-related records to redact President Trump's name from the files. Bloomberg reported this, that you directed FBI special agents from the New York and Washington field offices to join the Bureau's FOIA employees in Winchester and another building a few miles away, and that while reviewing the Epstein files, FBI personnel identified numerous references to Trump in the documents, and people familiar with the matter said that Trump's name, along with other high-profile individuals, was blacked out. Now, the New York Times reports, and this is a quote, Justice Department officials diverted hundreds of FBI employees and federal prosecutors from their regular duties to go through the documents at least 4 times, including once to flag any references to Mr. Trump and other prominent figures. Details of the review were based on accounts by 3 former FBI and Justice Department officials who spoke on condition of anonymity because of fears of retaliation, and further that the FBI finished after they finished its review of the files and materials, was sent to a team of Justice Department lawyers who double-checked the FBI's redactions and, quote, were instructed to flag any mentions of Mr. Trump and other celebrities. Now, I have 3 questions for you, Mr. Patel, about this. First, how many times did President Trump's name appear in the Epstein files? Was it more than 100, more than 1,000? Were the agents who were pulled from their duties to redact the president's name from the Epstein files working on criminal cases or national security cases or child sex trafficking cases? And are the number of agents that have been reported diverted for these purposes, is that accurate?
No.
No what?
You asked if it was accurate. I said it wasn't.
So you're saying that none of this happened?
No, I'm saying it was inaccurate.
Okay. How many times did President Numps appear in the Epstein files? More than 100? More than 1,000?
No, and what we've been able to release is what we've been legally able to release, and that has been
No, that's not the
provided to
question.
public.
I asked you, how many times did the president's name appear?
I don't know.
It's your testimony. You do not know that answer.
The number of times, no.
Could you tell us how many agents were diverted for this task and what they were working on?
When you say diverted, you make it seem as if agents were pulled off what they do all the time. Agents at the FBI masterfully do double duty and triple duty. And because of the public's interest in this case, we flex resources to make sure that we could answer the public's signal demand. So do you want us to look through the material and provide it to you, or you do not want us to do that?
So it's
Which
your,
one is it?
it's your testimony that no one was diverted from a criminal matter, that this was a top priority to go through these this material to look for Mr. Trump's name. Is that your testimony? That's the highest priority for the FBI?
What's one of the most impressive things about the FBI leadership and the careers that are in place is that they make the decisions on who to send where on priorities and make sure the mission needs are not hurt. And that's what happened here.
It's shocking to me that the FBI would think that erasing Mr. Trump's name from the Epstein files is a high priority when we have crime, we have national security threats, we have terrorism threats, we have murders such as that occurred, unfortunately, with Mr. Kirk. It's shocking to hear that that's your highest priority. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I
That's
yield
literally
back.
not what I said.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Wisconsin is recognized.
Director, is President Trump implicated in any wrongdoing related to Jeffrey Epstein?
Based on the entirety of the evidence that we have, absolutely not.
The president is not implicated.
Correct.
Thank you. I want to talk a little bit about China's malign influence here in America. And, we've seen spy balloons traverse the United States. We've seen police stations in communities around America. And sitting in the chair you're in just 2 years ago, there was a sheriff from Cochise County, Arizona, Mark Daniels, that was here, who said that the the exponential increase in the amount of fentanyl that is coming into America is directly related to the open borders policies of the previous administration. Do you agree with Sheriff Dannell's characterization?
In large part, yes.
So, since you've been director, has there been a reduction with, I mean, we've talked about how the border is largely secure now, right?
The southern border, yes, sir.
The southern border is largely secure. Has there been a concomitant reduction or a reduction in the amount of fentanyl that is coming into America?
There has been a massive reduction to the tune of, we have seized more than this year than the prior year, and that's enough fentanyl to kill 120 million Americans.
Does China play a role in this fentanyl that's coming to America?
As I stated in my opening, sir, what they do and the companies in China, mainland China, do is produce the precursors and the cutting agents that they ship overseas through various countries into the Mexican drug cartels who produce it. So they basically are the cooks in terms of the ingredients.
Tell us, what is the FBI doing to stop China from delivering death to America?
So for the first time in a decade, actually public security. No one at the FBI had done so. To engage...
Ministry of Security, where's that?
In mainland China.
In mainland China, okay, thank you.
To engage in a conversation to say, hey, can we have a certain number of these precursor chemicals listed in China so that they become illegal and illegal to trade. We're also working with our counterparts in places like India and Guatemala because the transshipment routes of the precursors, the Mexican drug cartels have gotten creative, and instead of coming directly to America, are going into these countries. And we've had massive success in India and Guatemala, and in those governments' great partnerships in shutting down the ability to ship the precursors into those countries, which are ultimately destined to America.
So those people that are working with security agencies have been working with you, is that accurate?
Yes, sir.
So I want to turn to a couple cases that are at the University of Michigan, where Chinese nationals, on behalf of the Chinese government, smuggled in illicit biological materials, stuff that can harm our agricultural industry. What actions are you taking as we see repeated stories of Chinese nationals doing this in the United States?
So just that, sir. In this calendar year alone, as I was mentioning, our counterintelligence operations and cases brought against the Chinese are up by, I think, something like 40%. And specifically, the cases in Michigan show two threat streams, not just against our agricultural industry, which is a threat to national security, but they were also bringing in chemical agents and mushrooms, I'm not the exact expert, that would have ultimately hurt our population. We arrested and charged all of those individuals, and we are aggressively going after them in every single state because they weren't doing it in Michigan alone.
Should research universities across the United States be doing a thorough job of vetting Chinese nationals that are coming to their universities?
They should.
Turning to spying in America, you know, we heard the stories about Senator Dianne Feinstein's driver, who was a Chinese spy. We're familiar with Linda Sun, who worked in Governor Hochul's office, Christine Fang in California. What are you doing to find these people who are Chinese spies that are trying to burrow themselves into the politics of America? Because we know it's happening, right?
Yes, it is. And what our counterintelligence unit is doing is aggressively taking the intelligence into where these individuals are working. Then we are utilizing our operational authorities to go in and investigate them either through our human source networks and collecting information through lawful process, online, search warrants, and data so that we can bring proper arrest charges and publicize to the world what they're doing here. And just because we've caught a few doesn't mean we've caught everybody. We've got a lot more to go.
I get one more quick question in. The FBI arrested a judge in Wisconsin, Hannah Dugan, for interfering with a federal law enforcement operation. Could you tell us a little bit about that? And is a judge above the law here in the United States of America?
Well, no one is, and that case is ongoing. But as you stated, and these allegations said, there was an interference in a federal lawfully executed federal law enforcement priority that was interfered with.
I yield back, Mr. Chair.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Tennessee is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Director Patel, I believe you had primary importance in starting Operation Viper in Memphis. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And Operation Viper brought in the FBI, the DEA, the ATF to help the Memphis police in policing the city.
That'll be phase 2, sir. Phase 1 was FBI and local law enforcement in Memphis for the last few months.
Okay. You did a good job, and the police director and the mayor have told me that that has been helpful, the FBI working with the police. And the FBI are trained in law enforcement. They know Miranda rights, they know how to do policing, and they do a good job working with the police. Do you think that the National Guard is necessary to do the work that the FBI is doing now?
Thank you. I do think it's necessary to finish it. What we've done is 500 arrests in Memphis and 110 federal indictments. But what we need to do is we've only secured a piece of where the criminal conduct is occurring in Memphis, and we can't work inside perimeters that are not established and safe, and we don't have the manpower to give us the space to fully go into the areas where the criminal activity remains.
Well, are you suggesting that the National Guard is going to go into the more heavily crime areas?
They're going to establish, like they did in Washington, D.C., perimeters where local law enforcement and the FBI, DEA, ATF, and U.S. Marshals can go into. We can't be going into all these areas knowing that they're extremely volatile and jeopardizing the safety of our agents.
Did the National Guard do anything in Washington to help the FBI stay safe from these dangerous elements?
They established perimeters.
Established perimeter, and the criminals knew about it, so they...
It was a visible force, sir, so they kind of saw it.
Well, what you did, I commend you for what you did, and I think the FBI coming in, we have a crime problem in Memphis. The FBI has helped, DEA will help, and the ATF will help. I don't think the National Guard's going to help, and what I've seen, they're not trained in law enforcement, are they?
No, sir.
And so that could be a problem. Who will direct the National Guard in Memphis? Will it be, will they have control over your agents?
No, sir, they won't.
Who will have control over your agents? You?
Well, the SAC and then ultimately the chain of command up to Washington, D.C. will control the FBI, but there's a task force that was put together that is going to be led by an interagency. The heads of U.S. Marshals, DEA, and FBI will be working together with DHS collectively on this.
Have you visited Memphis before?
Yes, sir, I have.
So you know how good a city it is.
I love Memphis.
A lot of us do. And Memphis is a great city, great history, civil rights museum. Might say something about slavery, but that was the history. It needs to be taught. Blues, Elvis.
Beale Street.
Beale Street, right, barbecue. And people should come. It's not a troubled city. We've got some crime, but it's not a troubled city. We're not troubled, and we love our city, and we hope that the National Guard doesn't come in and cause people to have questions about Memphis because it's a city they should visit. Let me ask you this about, you said that the homicide rates are coming down to an all-time low?
In modern recorded U.S. history, yes,
When
sir.
does modern recorded history start?
I think the FBI, and I'll get back to you on this, has stats on that going back about 30 years, sir.
Okay, I was thinking back to Ozzie and Harriet, and I didn't think you could beat Ozzie and Harriet's time. Secondly, you mentioned the Epstein case. Did any of the women that were victims, and they came up here and had a press conference and all, did any of them contact your office and ask to give information?
To my knowledge, no, sir.
If they did, let me ask you first, is there a statute of limitations on sex crimes like that, with sex with a minor, rape?
The DOJ is the expert, but I do not believe there's a statute on that, limitations on that.
So if there's not a statute of limitations, should you not be interviewing those people who know who raped them and the names and the places and give you that information? That seems like that's a treasure trove of information, and it's a serious, serious, serious number of crimes.
Sir, I couldn't agree with you more. We've been very public about asking individuals to come forward with new information, and we would run out every single lead on that.
Well, I'm sure the women will come forward, especially today, to be sure that they will get an opportunity, because that seems like something we ought to do. Mr. Driscoll, what was his reputation?
I can't comment on Mr. Driscoll's matter. It's an ongoing litigation.
Yeah, but his reputation you could tell us about.
I can't tell you about his reputation. His work has been laid out in that lawsuit.
How many of the FBI agents who worked on the January 6th case have been fired?
I don't have that number, sir.
Do you have a ballpark figure?
No, but I can tell you that individuals based on case assignments in the FBI that I have led have not been terminated for case assignments.
Thank you, sir. And come back to Memphis, and you work with Kevin Kane in our Tourism Bureau.
He's great.
Thank you. And thank you for your work in Memphis.
Gentleman, yes, back.
Mr. Chairman, I have a unanimous consent request.
Gentleman's recognized.
So I've got 4 documents I'd like to introduce into the record. The first one is Jeffrey Epstein's 6 story played out for years in plain sight. And Acosta is quoted in here saying, "I was told Epstein belonged to intelligence and to leave it alone." The second document is entitled, "What Epstein's Bodyguard Warned About His CIA Connections." The third document is from Fox Digital. It's titled, "Epstein's Private Calendar Reveals Planned Meetings with Obama Admin Official CIA Chief." And the last document is Wall Street Journal article that highlights Ehud Barak's 36 meetings with Jeffrey Epstein. He was the former Prime Minister of Israel and head of military intelligence for Israel. It may have held that title when he met Epstein, and then, yes.
Without objection, the gentleman will hold for a second. The gentleman from Maryland is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one UC request. This is Judge Engelmeyer's decision from August in U.S. versus Epstein, stating the government's 100,000 pages of Epstein files dwarfs the 70-odd pages of Epstein grand jury materials.
Without objection, the gentleman from Kentucky is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Patel, I watched some of your Senate hearing yesterday when Senator Kennedy asked you, "You've seen most of the files. Who, if anyone, did Epstein traffic these women to besides himself?" You replied, according to the transcript, "There is no credible information that he trafficked them to anyone else." You also said somewhere in the hearing and here today that the problem is that the case files are constrained by limited search warrants from 2006 to 2007, and that the non-prosecution agreement hamstrung future investigations. Those constraints only apply to Southern District of Florida. They do not apply to Southern District of New York, the location of the 2019 sex trafficking indictment, which produced many things, including a series of FD 302 documents. According to victims who cooperated with the FBI in that investigation, these documents in FBI possession, your possession, detail at least 20 men, including Mr. Jess Staley, CEO of Barclays Bank, who Jeffrey Epstein trafficked victims to, victims including minors, such as Virginia Roberts Giuffre, may she rest in peace. That list also includes at least 19 other individuals, one Hollywood producer worth a few $100 million, one royal prince, one high-profile individual in the music industry, one very prominent banker, one high-profile government official, one high-profile former politician, one owner of a car company in Italy, one rock star, one magician, at least 6 billionaires, including a billionaire from Canada. We know these people exist in the FBI files, the files that you control. I don't know exactly who they are, but the FBI does. Have you launched any investigations into any of these people, and have you seen these 302 documents?
Sir, I have asked my FBI agents to review the entirety of the Epstein files and bring forth any credible information, and we're working with Congress not only to divulge that information and produce it to you, but any investigations that arise from any credible investigation will be brought. There have been no new materials brought to me launching a new indictment.
So is the loophole here, or is it your assertion that these victims aren't credible, that the 302s maybe didn't produce credible statements that rise to a probable cause?
It's not my assertion, sir. It's the assertion of 2 different United States attorneys' offices from 3 separate administrations who investigated those same materials in lifetime.
Are the 302 documents in the FBI's possession?
They reviewed all that, yes, sir.
And so have you reviewed those 302 documents where the victims name the people who victimized them?
If I personally know, but the FBI has.
So how can you sit here and in front of the Senate and say there are no names?
I said
I named one today.
I said we are not in the practice at the Department of Justice FBI of releasing victims' names. That is not what we do. We are also not in the habit of releasing incredible information. That's not what we do. But multiple authorities have looked at the entirety of what we have.
Okay, I got to move on here. Were you present when the AG had the White House event when she released the binders to the social media influencers?
I was, yes.
So if you're willing to meet with social media influencers who stood to benefit from the sensational and sad stories of these victims, will you meet with the victims as well?
The FBI will meet with anyone who has new information.
Will you personally meet with them?
The FBI and the professionals who are handling the cases will.
Were you instructed that it was important to release the documents to the Oversight Committee on the day of my introduction of the discharge petition to release these files?
I don't know what day that was, so no.
Well, they were released that day, and there were victims' names who weren't redacted because they were in such a rush, and the victims are not happy about that. Have you investigated any of the CIA connections? Have you seen the CIA file on Jeffrey Epstein? And if you wanted to see it, would they show it to you?
Well, I can speak for the FBI, and that's presuming there's a CIA case file. And I've reviewed everything that the interagency, not I, the FBI, that was provided to us.
Would you be willing to look at the CIA file on Jeffrey Epstein?
If there is such a file, and if it has not already been turned over to the FBI will look at any new investigative leads.
Have you made any progress on the pipe bomb investigation January 6th? And have you made any progress on the motive of the Las Vegas shooter?
As to the first, it's an ongoing investigation, and we have made progress. As to the second, sir, I'll have to get back to you.
All right, thank you. I yield back.
Mr. Chairman, I have a unanimous
Gentleman
consent
yields back.
request.
Unanimous consent request from the gentleman from New York.
I ask unanimous consent to introduce an unsigned memorandum from July 7, 2025 that says we did not uncover evidence that could predicate an investigation against uncharged third parties with the insignia of the Department of Justice and the FBI.
Without objection.
Mr. Chairman, I have a unanimous
Gentleman from
consent request. It's a article entitled DOJ Deletes Study Showing Domestic Terrorists Are Most Often Right-Wing.
Without objection.
Thank you.
Gentleman from Georgia is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Patel, thank you for being here today. I want to first talk about the significant role that the FBI plays in combating the national security threats posed by our nation's greatest threat, our nation's greatest security threat, China and the Chinese Communist Party. It's a fact that China is America's most significant national security threat, isn't that correct?
I would say so, sir.
And you would agree with me that China wants to dominate the United States of America?
I think that's largely their plan.
And they want to dominate the world, both militarily and economically, isn't that correct?
I think so.
And sir, you've been FBI director for the last, 8 months?
7 months, yes.
7 months, and during that time, have you held any stock in any companies founded in China?
I don't believe so.
Well, you do own stock in a company known as Elite Depot, don't you?
Which one, sorry?
Elite Depot. You own stock.
I think that's, I'll have to get back to you. I think it's a law firm and it's a company out of Singapore.
Okay, well, no, the company out of Singapore, which is owned by Elite Depot, is the Shein Company, which was founded in China, correct?
That company operates out of Taiwan.
Well, they changed their headquarters from China back in 2022 to Singapore for tax purposes, but it's owned by a Chinese billionaire. I think his name is Charlie Zhu, and you own stock in the company that owns Shein.
Which I disclosed during my confirmation process.
You certainly did. And now, do you still hold that stock in that Chinese company?
Pursuant to the Department of Justice, who reviewed my material that was submitted during my confirmation process, I was able to hold certain stocks, and they made the decision.
You still hold the stocks that you have? You still hold on to these Chinese stocks, these stocks in this Chinese company?
I disagree that it's a Chinese company, but I was in the DOJ, when you're appointed, makes a call on what you can and can't possess.
Well, now, let me ask you this. Chinese companies steal trademarks. They produce counterfeit products and sell them over the internet on platforms such as Shein. They steal intellectual property. They steal data from American companies. And to me, it seems inconsistent with your role as FBI director that you would own stock in a company that is based in a country that is the nation's premier national security threat. It's like you are putting your own financial security over the security of the nation.
I disagree with that characterization.